Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Undercooled. And today we are lucky to have with us Professor Perry Samson. Perry is the Arthur Thurneau Professor of Atmospheric Science in the Climate and Space Sciences Department. And Perry has had an amazing career. He's really well known for starting the Weather Underground many years ago, and has also been very involved in technology in education, especially with the development of his company called LearningClues, which eventually was sold to Echo 360. And I'll let Perry in a little while tell you about that. And now he's got a new venture using generative AI to help students get information from courses with a curated set of data. So with that, welcome, Perry, and why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, thanks, Steve. What about myself? I've been building technology for a long time for the classroom, and I've always built it only because there's a need I had in my own class. Like the Weather Underground, I built that because I simply wanted weather information for my 9 o'clock class, and this was back before there was an internet, so we had to be creative in how we got that information. And that had as many as 50 people use it a week. We thought that was pretty darn good. And then Hurricane Bob happened and it jumped to 50,000. So when you create something that you need for your own class, as I know you do, Steve, invariably there are other people who need it as well. So it's the information, the ideas seem to just grow through the community.
That's great. And you've always taught the extreme weather course. And how many students are in that class typically?
Oh, countless. A couple hundred students a semester, limited by room size, until we moved to a model where I made a hybrid so they could either come to class or not come to class, and I grew beyond that at that point. As I created lecture tools, which allowed students to interact with me and each other during class time. And so we had more interactive sessions, more kinds of questions we could ask, get students to actively involved in constructing their own understanding. And here we are today now with this new tool called LearningClues, built on, well, I'll get there in a moment, but it's just built on some other expectations that I think students want and need.
So you have a very long history of using technology in your classroom, and I know you've done a lot of innovative things with lecture tools. You also learned how to start a company and how to sell it.
You never learn. You're learning.
And you even had a little business incubator in your space near the Michigan Theater for a while, trying to help other people develop their ideas. Mm-hmm. And during the process with lecture tools, you also use lecture tools to do a lot of interesting research on learning. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that came out of that was we were building this basically with the students in the class and saying, all right, now I can ask you questions during class and you can respond. I can ask all kinds of questions. Now it was far beyond the clickers, which was the main source at that point. But I said, anything else that you think we need? And they said, well, yeah, how about if we could ask you questions during class? And so we added what we call a back channel, where the students could pose questions during class, and then my teaching assistant would be answering these questions as class was going on, basically doing spin control on what Perry was saying. He really didn't mean to say that. And that wound up being ridiculously popular, where students who otherwise in a large lecture hall were not going to raise their hand. It's a very intimidating environment. You imagine you're a first generation student, or you're just a student for whom the rest of the class looks different. And you're saying, oh, no way I'm raising my hand in this class. And so this back channel concept took off. And I would average over 500 questions a semester from a class of about 150. So either this allowed them to ask the questions they otherwise wouldn't, and or I'm just that confusing, but regardless, the students had the opportunity to participate more fully in the class who otherwise might not, which led us to a research project we have going on still now for the National Science Foundation for how does the availability of a back channel affect your self sense of belonging in the discipline. If you in a class and you don't feel like you belong, if you could ask questions and realize, or just see the questions and realize that the other questions are no dumber than the questions you would ask, then you feel like maybe I do belong here, and that research continues.
Oh, that's awesome. And then I also know you had the tool where students could put a dot on an image, and you did some interesting things with that. Can you tell us about what you did with physical and mental well-being?
Well, thanks for asking that, because that was one of my prides, was that we had clickers, and clickers I thought were a good step towards trying to help the students know what they didn't know. But the kinds of data that I teach about is more geospatial, weather maps and such. So I could show the map of the United States and say, well, where do you expect it to be warmer tomorrow, and why? That was the most important part. Was not only could they put a dot on the image as their vote, but also have to explain why they chose that spot. And then it just changed the nature of my class, because instead of just going on and talking for the whole 50 minutes, invariably one of these big good maps would show up, and I would just go from dot to dot and talk about what here's your answer. You chose this spot, and your logic was this. And I could uncover a lot of misconceptions in the process of just letting them vote and offer their logic behind the voting. So it's a fundamental different way to conduct class, where you've actually now invited them to ask the questions to show what they know so that you can give them feedback. I thought that was great fun in a weather class, of course. And, we have a map of every track of every hurricane that's ever happened, and say, well, what on this map doesn't make sense? Try that with pretty much any graph you've got. Try it with an image you've got. And ask your students, what part of this image doesn't make sense? And you get some very, very interesting questions.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And I'm really glad you're saying all this, because this is going to feed into our discussion of artificial intelligence and generative AI, I'm sure, in a very big way. But before we get there, can you also talk about two more things I remember you telling me that I thought were fascinating? You did some research to figure out what was the impact of students who only saw your lecture from their dorm room versus those who actually came to class. So why don't you tell us about that?
Even before COVID, it became obvious to me that the weather kind of sucks in Michigan from time to time, and it was challenging for everybody to get to class, and many students had legitimate reasons. They were ill, they had other responsibilities, they couldn't come to class. So why not think of it differently? And I looked into how could I broadcast my class, and found some technology which let me do that. This technology with the broadcast meant that now I could still have the same interactions, ask the questions about the map or whatever, and the students sitting in their dormitory or wherever they're at could still answer questions and ask questions from where they were. So the logical next question was, well, did it affect their learning? And the research I did, which we published for the EDUCAUSE, showed that, in fact, the students who were we knew where the students were every day, and we were able to then go through them. And the students who were watching from away wound up getting the same. The distribution in grades wasn't different. There was no change, no whatsoever. Now, it might have been the nature of that particular course where we didn't require a whole lot of group discussion. I mean, of course, like the courses you have, there's a great deal of group discussion. And obviously that benefits, I think, from being in class together. In this particular case, it was not that. I was a class with 200. I was given one teaching assistant. So we did it in a more traditional way. And in that situation, the students had all the access to the resources and they fully were able. I was actually teaching from here in northern Michigan to the students, either in the classroom, they can come to the classroom, or it could be wherever. And we discovered that too, once we made that an option, that the number of students who physically came to class dropped by 50% after about 2 weeks. Yeah. And then just continued to drop as the semester went on. Because they are smart kids. They can figure out, do I physically need to be in this particular course or not? I mean, we enlist the best students to come to Michigan, honor that. They can figure it out. And if they don't figure it out, if they cannot, my baseline question was, can they answer the questions on the exams correctly? And if you can do that by watching from away, why not make that an option? Now, I know my colleagues might disagree with that, but at least for this kind of course, it made sense.
Great. And what about the when you had them fill out the plot where they had to put a dot on the page with how they felt, right, mentally or physically?
Oh, okay. Thanks. I forgot about that. You're right. That was a bit of research also. We had an image on the screen, and the image allowed you to put on this graph. The x-axis, I believe, was how did you feel physically? And the y-axis is how did you feel emotionally? And you could put a dot on the map, and I had every day in class do that. And then we were able to trace over the semester then how these dots changed after the semester was over, how these dots changed, and related that to grades and such. The relationships, first of all, were very collinear. If you're physically unwell, then you were emotionally unwell. That made sense. There were certainly outliers, and we tried to discover what these issues were about. On a few days each semester, we'd say, all right, put your dot on the map and turn on that feature. So now tell us why. Why are you feeling this way? And there's just so many different issues that students were suffering through that I never would have known about. As an instructor, so much of how they engage in the course and how much they can really focus is a function of other things we don't know about, physically and emotionally. And so this insight about, some students are really, holy crow, these students are having some real issues here. Now, I asked them afterwards, well, what would you want me to do? If I knew that you were having some emotional crisis, first of all, if it's really bad, it's my job to try to get some help. But beyond that, what would you hope I would do? And I gave them a series of options. Number one was, here are some resources on campus. And their response to that was, that's fine. Or, okay, I could let your advisor know. No, we don't want that. I guess I could let your parents know. Absolutely not. So what do you want? And the one thing they all wanted was coffee. They wanted simply someone to listen. They wanted to sit down, have coffee, explain their situation. I guess probably thinking I was going to be empathetic. So cute. But they just wanted more connection with their instructor. And again, it's rare that students find the courage to come up and ask for help. So finding ways like little games like this that help them at least express their issues I think we have to think more, finding more ways to hear the students.
And didn't you also find a strong correlation with the grades the students got?
Yeah, we did. But I cannot remember the details of that. I think we wrote it up in an article. The grades that students got as a function of emotional. Yeah, there was clearly the students who had bigger emotional challenges got lower grades. That was true. Now, whether it was with cause and effect, I don't know, but there was certainly a relationship between the two. Also, there was also, I will say, a very strong relationship between emotional state and the minimum temperature.
And were you able to be predictive about it?
Um, we were. Well, the predictive part was, and it's like this is one of those duh moments when you're teaching. And the duh moment was because we were able to ask so many questions in class with all, image-based questions, free response questions, multiple choice, wide numerical answers. The students who got more of those questions wrong during class did systematically poorer on exams. Like, duh. If you don't get it during class time, you're less likely to know it on an exam. And these systems let me find those students who were just getting questions wrong, and I could reach out to them and ask if they wanted to get together, come to office hours, and some did, but again, even though I knew that, even I could predict that you're not going to do well, there are always going to be students who just, for whatever reason, didn't see value in it. Maybe they're taking a pass-fail and just didn't care. There's all sorts of reasons I can only guess.
So clearly, you have spent a long time thinking very deeply about teaching and how to use technology.
That's a nice way of saying you're quite old, Perry. I hear you.
So you just started a new company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your new company and your vision for this?
Okay. Well, another pet peeve I had teaching is that I would be forever putting up extra resources that I thought were stimulating and related to what we're talking about in class. I would fill I think it was the files folder in Canvas with all these interesting articles or make pages of other stuff in Canvas. And the students didn't look at them, which for all the effort I put in, I felt like they should at least give that some. And unless I specifically pointed it out during class, they didn't even know they existed. So I do a lot based on pet peeves. And this one was that we started building a system where we could ingest the video from class. And Kane gave us a way to try this out. So we get the video from class, we get the transcript from class, and we index that information, what was talked about in today's class. And at the same time, scraped on my website everything that was in Canvas on my site. And then it made the relationship so that if I talked about, hurricanes in Bangladesh, it would be able to, point them to an article or a document I had in Canvas relevant to that discussion and automatically make the contextual links between what we're talking about in class and external resources. And then OpenAI came along, and that just changed the whole game now, because not only could we could ingest the class videos, we could take the class video and actually extract from the video any words which were being presented on the screen during class, which was good because some people forget to turn on their microphones. Maybe the accent is such that the transcription is not good. And in technical courses, these transcriptions don't often get the technical words. Now we got them. And on top of that, we went and scraped everything in the Canvas site. And then we came up with this very creative very creative system that you ask a question in class or outside of class, and it goes into our database and extracts any information that you either said, presented, or made available in Canvas, gathers that information, sends off a prompt then to OpenAI, which then returns a response to your question. And the exciting thing for us was not only does it return the answer, but it returns each sentence, each part of the answer has a citation, which will take you back to the spot in the video or in the document that was used to create the answer. So for me, this became like you have your own virtual mentor, and every course could actually add another mentor to the course who would be able to answer the questions 24/7 with the confidence that the answers the students get are based only on what you taught.
That's fascinating. So this is really a curated data set, curated by the instructor for the course, by limiting it to just that material. Is that right?
Precisely. And that, and the other part of it is that many of us instructors are concerned about our content being released out to the internet. So our system also forbids any information we get from the class being shared with the large language models to protect the IP of the course.
Wow. So you've explained pretty much how it works. What do you view the best practices for using this right now the way it is?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Right now, in fact, in very, very soon, being next semester, we hope to make this available at Michigan and at other schools for people to try it out in their class. Because what we're looking for first is to make it available to instructors. You're teaching a course, we'll make a system for you for your course based on things you've said in the past, and then you can evaluate it yourself. Are the answers it's providing answers that you would find appropriate, answers that you'd be comfortable representing you to answer the student's question? And if not, why not? So we can help us train the models better. But what we're looking for, this helps us train the model for your course so that you would, once you release it to your students, know that it's going to be able to, these students could ask a question at 3 a.m, and many faculty don't want to answer then, so they could get a response when the students have them. And that's sort of the ultimate goal here, is to help. It's helping students, but it's also helping us. It's self-serving because all those questions now, some of them at least, could get answered automatically. Again, we're hoping students, particularly those who are uncomfortable coming up to you, Steve, or coming up to the instructor and asking a question verbally. Now they can go ask the question whenever they have it, and they might follow up with you, and you'll be able to see what questions the students are asking. But democratize the classroom, allow more students to ask questions, allow more students to participate in a way that's comfortable for them.
That's great. And so can the instructor choose what gets shared with your model and what doesn't? Like, say a instructor has all the homework solutions, but on Canvas, they're not going to be revealed until after the student puts it in, or exam solutions, that sort of thing.
Well, the instructor, first of all, tells us whether they want us to be sniffing their Canvas site. And if they do, what parts of it do they want us to sniff? Is it the files? Is it the pages? Which, or the assignments? Just, oh my gosh, just the syllabus. And how many questions do you get every year about the syllabus that the students should have known by just reading the syllabus? But this way, it would answer questions about the syllabus and offload some of those basic questions. So you can make those available. And as we do that I'll call it sniffing of the system, spidering of the system. We look each element in Canvas has a date attached to it. And that date tells it, has it been released to your students yet? If it hasn't been released to your students, we don't include it. So you have control over it.
So if an instructor was to ask to use LearningClues, say next term, LearningClues would come in every day and see what new material has been added or is available for the students and update it. Is that how it works?
That's right.
Okay, wow. And does the instructor have to do anything, or is this all handled in the background?
Well, it's all hands off. We don't want any more work for instructors. You know, as an instructor, I appreciate we're busy people. So the whole thing works in the background automatically, sniffing what's on your site. You just add more stuff to your Canvas site. It becomes available to your students when you ask it to be. That said, we are designing an instructor dashboard so that you could see what questions are being asked, that you could upload, like we generate definitions for the keywords which are being spoken in class, but maybe you have a glossary of words that you prefer. You could upload your glossary and that would just trump anything the AI does. We want the instructor to be able to design and have control over the course. We just want to deliver the content as accurately as possible to reflect what the instructor wants. But we want it to include the entire ecosystem of resources. That said, I also want the students to have access to this and then let the students be able to add other resources they personally would like to add to the course. And maybe they found a YouTube video that's quite helpful. They could use that and make that part of their own personal learning space. So we encourage students to build their knowledge. That's the whole point here. But give them the basics.
That's
and
great.
Please ask the computer about when the next exam is. Don't trouble me with that.
And so I presume that if you have documents in like a module linked that are, the student can get, so can LearningClues, it can get it. And I presume if you have links that go to YouTube videos that the instructor added in, those get included as well, just everything.
If the instructor makes it available in Canvas, we trust that they put it there so the students would access it.
What about the textbook?
The textbook asterisk, yes, we can include the textbook. We're working with a couple different vendors, one Vital Source and another one, and or open education textbooks. Open education textbooks, no problem whatsoever. We can make that part of the search. If you have a commercial textbook, we have a way now to work with the publishers so that if you have already you bought your book through one of these vendors, that we would be able to know that the question you asked was talked about by your instructor. It's a part of a document in the Canvas, and it's on page 413 in your textbook. Click the link. Assuming you have the login, it'll take you to that page in the textbook.
So I use Perusal, and students buy an electronic version of the text or rent it on Perusal. So I have one part of the picture covered for the intellectual property. I know that every student in my class has already bought the book because it's a requirement. You can't buy a used book or anything like that. But it's not through Vital Source. It's through Perusal.
Yeah.
So will that work?
Eric and I need to have a beer, and we'll make it.
And yeah. But I would think that a textbook author would love to have maybe a standalone version of your product for the book. So anybody who buys the book can have that once they prove they bought the book. I think that would greatly enhance, it's an amazing index for the book.
I wish we have recorded that. I will send that to the publishers because I think you're right. And that's conversations, but talking to publishers and getting them to release their, well, they are constrained by their authors about protecting the property.
Sure.
So we just have to find a way to do that fulfills that. And it's doable. It's just a matter of a conversation.
But it should enhance the value of their book as long as they know how to control the IP.
We can go a step further. In fact, we're talking with like Vital Source about this, that we could add some code into the textbook itself. So you click on a keyword in the textbook, it'll open up your own instructor talking about it. We can go, and the whole point about what we built here is a system that is, I call it the mayonnaise in the sandwich. It's just it helps any part of the content of the course know about all the other parts of the course. So if you can go from any one document to any other document because we know it was talked about in your class. That's the real power of the system, is just organizing the entire learning ecospace.
So now the one thing about this that I first thought of when I heard about it, and I've talked to you about it, is retrieving information like this from the student's perspective is fantastic, but it's still kind of a passive activity. They just ask and they get without necessarily thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So back to your experience with asking students why something is wrong, you've told me that your next generation of LearningClues will include more pedagogically sound methods to actually improve the learning for students. Can you talk about that?
Well, this is still in our roadmap, but yeah, and understandably, students will learn deeper if they build their own understanding. And so this model that we're using now with LearningClues is I call more a librarian mode, where you pose questions and it gives you a response. It does give you the links to the resources that are used to make the response, so you can go and review those resources to go deeper. But we'd like to go to a different, we'd like to offer a secondary option that we don't have a name for it yet, but instead of coming back with the answer, it might come back with a question to you. And that question, as you answer that question, we would then know from your response how to present the next page to you. And there are ways to build this. It's not trivial, but there are ways to build this so you can help the students build their understanding. What do you know about this? Or you ask a question which leads them to tell us what they think the answer is, which will allow us to come back with a follow-up question like you would as an instructor with a student. Instead of just answering the question, you always come back and say, well, what do you know so far about this? And get the conversation going. That would be the goal. It's not trivial to do, but we have very reasonably, given the content we have access to, that this is doable.
That's great. What about figures? Right now, I know that Chat GPT has trouble with figures. On the other hand, there's all these image AI tools like DALL-E and others. Do you think there's hope for extracting information from figures that are presented in class or in books or in papers, or even giving students, asking them questions to draw something, scan it, show it?
We're getting close to the point where I have to ask for an NDA. This is.
Well, these are just.
Yeah. I mean, literally every week we have meetings, and understand this project is just not me. And there's Kevin Collins Thompson from the School of Information and a team of like 20 students working on this. And we're constantly studying what's the latest in generative AI, and it's just head blowing every week.
Yeah.
What? So the short answer is yes. And I'm not gonna tip my hat here,
That's
but
okay.
let's just say that yes, figures can be interpreted. Not only can figures be interpreted, but potentially by simply taking one of the figures that you showed on a slide in class, we can generate questions for the student.
That's great. And are you planning on adding? I mean, I've heard some of these voice models, and they're amazing. So instead of typing your prompt, you use just talk, and then the AI bot talks back to you in a better synthesized language than Siri or Alexa.
No,
And
I,
it's
that, you know, that I have no idea what you're talking about.
well, I've heard it. I've heard people
Again,
use it. Yeah.
and please understand that the students today are into this. And so I've got this research team, we call it Clues on campus, and they're exploring all these things. And for them, it's like personal because this would affect their own learning and the learning of future students. So all I can say is it's a rich minefield right now to explore, and we're exploring it as fast as we can.
And of course, as these tools keep being developed that you can use, it's I can understand your need for an NDA because lots of people are doing the same thing, and there's already I'm getting in my mailbox, generative AI companies saying, "Oh, let's have a talk. We can help you, have your students write better papers. Oh, and we can detect plagiarism." It's like, no, they can't, and it's there. Everyone is getting involved with this. So, what do they call it at Apple when like getting Sherlocked? Lots of people are going to be getting Sherlocked. So this is a tough business to be in, Perry. Are you sure you want to be there?
Well, actually, my wife doesn't want me just running around the house now that I'm retired. So yeah, no, this is fine. This is great fun. Actually, it was just learning. My area was meteorology and air pollution, and we use things that are like generative AI to analyze weather information. So expanding that to look at just words has been a great learning experience for me, and I'm leaning on people in computer science at Michigan and school information at Michigan. I'm having a great time. This is a whole new genre of topics with just all sorts of potential. So my goal and the goal of the National Science Foundation is we make this. They said we don't want unicorns, we want zebras. We want you to make a company that would actually just be able to pay its dues, but more importantly, it would serve the social need. And I hope that's where we're going.
Well, I certainly plan to use your company for my next term, and I know how to get in touch with you, and it's easy, and it's probably pretty easy for University of Michigan faculty. But can you talk about how others might be able to get involved with you from other universities or anyone who happens to be listening to this podcast?
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, we have a website, LearningClues.com. And on that website are places you can sign up for. We are taking invitations to get a pilot at other institutions. And we have a number of institutions who are signed up now. So we'll be opening up at multiple schools sometime in the spring semester. And if other schools want to take it for a test drive, we can right now offer anybody the opportunity to try it out. Send us a link, a YouTube playlist, if you had a YouTube playlist of your favorite lectures or whatever, send us that link, and within a couple hours, we can send you back your own course that you can try it out on your own to see if it's how it's answering the questions for that group of videos. I've been trying out all sorts of things. Of course, I'm biased, but I'm quite thrilled with what it's doing.
Yeah, I can tell you, you did it for my lectures I made during COVID, and it's amazing how good it is.
Do we have the time to show it, or?
Yeah, we can. Not a lot of people might be listening to this, but this will be on YouTube, so you can show it. And I'm certainly send me all the links and what you want me to say, and we'll put it in the show notes so that everybody will have it who is just listening on a podcast. They'll be able to go there, and we'll put the YouTube link into the show notes as well. So yeah, show it to us.
So here's a course on Python, and how do you create nested loops? And you could imagine any question you want to about Python. This is based on a course Charles Severance in the School of Information at Michigan, where he had something like 50 videos in the course, and it's searching now through all those 50 videos and also the textbook for his course. And it takes a moment because it's looking through a lot of stuff, and it comes back here with an answer. To create a nested loop, you start with the outer loop and iterates over blah, blah, blah. But the important thing here is this first sentence is based on citation 1. And citation 1, if we open it up here, it will take you to the exact spot in that lecture.
Yeah, unfortunately, the sound from the computer won't show up.
Yeah. But the point being that the student now is able to ask the question and get an answer, but also that will go back to the original material that the instructor made available to get the answer. And it could be spots in the video, or it could be spots in the textbook. So that's sort of the big picture there is just, again, the things that we make available to our students, make it so they can find them more quickly. Rather than having to scroll through a video, just take them to at least near the spot where it's appropriate, so it helps them more efficiently study.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Perry, for spending some time with us. I hope a lot of people try your tool. I think they will. And again, thank you so much. Please stick around because we have to wait for everything to upload. But with that, we'll say goodbye, and I'll play our music.
Thank you, Steve.